Christ my Lord, the giver of light and wisdom, who opened the eyes of the blind man and transformed the fishermen into wise heralds and teachers of the gospel through the coming of the Holy Spirit, shine also in my mind the light of the grace of the Holy Spirit. Grant me discernment, understanding, and wisdom and learning. Enable me to complete my assignments and to abound in every good work, for to you I give honor and glory. Amen. Most blessed Lord, send the grace of your Holy Spirit on me to strengthen me, that I may learn well the subject I am about to study, and by it become a better person, for your glory, the comfort of my family, and the benefit of your church and our nation. Amen. All right, if memory serves, you guys owe me a revision paper that I asked to be attached to the original so that I know whether you did what I asked you to or not. So we're okay. Okay, you just dodged that bullet just so well. All right.
I got sent the link to the paper.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing. I did not, the people who did not come, I did not give that particular, okay, Henley, it's attached. It's physically attached. I asked it to be attached. And they're like, Henley, what did you do? You attached it. So, no, I have Liam's original that so he doesn't, so this is the revision you just gave me. So I'll put that with that. All right. These are the Socrates and Jesus papers. So if I did not say, please do a revision, you don't have to do a revision. It's painfully obvious. I'm not even sure if I said it to anyone here. And sometimes I said, oh, please, do. But for those of you who are getting, okay, did you just give me one, Kinsley, too, a revision? So this is the original of yours. And Olivia, you just gave me one. Oh, and that's why, Luke, you didn't, is this the one you just gave me? The Thucydides?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. See, you didn't have to give me that one, because, all right, great. Okay, this is Elliot's, because he was here. Miriam, so some of you gave me more than one paper? Or you didn't do the Socrates? You know what? I'm just confused. And I don't. Oh, Henley. Here's my problem. I did everything this week. I've been reading the papers I got on Tuesday, and I've already been prepping for next week because I'm going to be gone all weekend. And I don't know what's going on. All right. Does anybody have a question? I will just give you what I want you to write for next week now while we're talking about papers and before I forget about it. This is going to be a nice break before our final paper of the year, honestly. I'm only going to assign one larger paper, but this is just a summa, so just a paragraph. And it is completely and utterly opinion so that you can freely say I. Some of you I've been saying, don't say I'm going to show you or I'm going to tell you. There's generally never any reason to say I am going to tell you, but some teachers don't ever want to see first person. This does not apply to this one because I'm asking your opinion. And your opinion is the answer to this question. Would you personally, have enjoyed a conversation with Socrates? That's it. I would like you to have reasons for how you feel. We should not just feel something and say, oh, I just vaguely feel it. That's not going to cut it. But you can have your own personal reasons. I'm worried I might be embarrassed publicly because maybe I don't know very much about what he's talking about. Or he's annoying and he just won't stop talking and I just don't enjoy that. Or I feel like I am lacking and I feel like he could show me where I'm, whatever, have reasons. But that's it. I just kind of like to get a feel for how you feel about Socrates. Some people really, really don't like him. Obviously, some people didn't like him then. But I mean now. I've read things and they're like he's snarky and he's pushy and he says he's asking questions, but he really just tells them what to think. Some people feel this way, and some people think, oh, he's amazing. I love him. All right, that's it. That's all. But I would like the figures of speech included. There's no reason why in a paragraph you can't throw in all your figures of speech. And then next week, I will give you our final larger paper, and that will give us time to write it and maybe do a revision if necessary before the end of the year. I don't have Post-it notes on our fine, not very well-dressed lady today. I apologize for insulting anyone's sensibilities. But this is a statue that we just know tons about. People raved about this statue. This was it. This was the pinnacle of Greek art, according to people I'm going to quote here in a minute. Well, let me read the description, and then I want to see if there's anything like this today. I don't know. The Aphrodite of Knidos. Knidos is one of those little islands that we became so familiar with in the Peloponnesian War and in Herodotus. This was carved while Plato was writing his dialogues. Socrates was already dead, but this is during Plato's lifetime. This, however, was not carved then because this is a copy. This is a Roman copy. We often can discern Roman copies. They like to give them props and lean them on things for extra support because often the original was cast in bronze or something like that. So I'm not totally sure about the original. I think the original was marble though. Okay, so I'm showing you her. Okay, just a second. Oh man, most of you have seen her, but. So I will not leave her here to distract you the whole time. But Henley's like, where was she keeping that? Oh, well, all the poor people on the video don't know what I'm doing. Okay, you can sit in my chair. All right, so this is a statue that was found in France, not this one. This is a copy. I can't afford the insurance for the original. You know, they think she had a mirror and she's playing with a ball or she's the apple, you know, because she won the apple. But I like to think that she has an ice cream cone and for some reason she's taken the ice cream off. It's the first thing I think. Anyway, my point is she's not naked. I realize she's topless because it just wasn't a thing. Naked guys were fine. The ladies, no. That was not a thing. So they always have some sort of drapery. You just never really did this. Now, can you think of a modern parallel? Okay, it's not quite this dramatic. And it has to do with clothing. Do you ever look at pictures from the 1940s or the 1950s or the 30s or the 20s? How did people used to dress when they went to the store? Just, we're going to the grocery store, how did they dress? You can think that over. Yeah, people wore suits and ties. You guys are younger than me, but like grandparents or great-grandparents that had to change their clothes to go to town? Have you ever experienced this? No? My grandpa was a farmer, and my grandma would not be caught dead with him in town dressed up to go out. Um, are you guys aware of the controversy over people dressing on airplanes? Have you heard about this? People saying, y'all look like a bunch of slobs on airplanes. Why don't you put some clothes on? And like, no, we like our jammies. We're just sitting in this chair anyway. And I'm not taking a side. I'm just saying it shows a shift in attitude that we don't need to dress that way. We want to be comfortable, and we don't care how we look. This is a similar shift in attitude, right? The goddess, and you drape her. And the artist here, Praxiteles, who's one of the best-known Greek artists ever. Nah, take all her clothes off. And let's have her doing something very mundane. Let's just take her clothes. She's getting ready to step into a bath. She's a goddess. Do you see how we're not treating the gods and goddesses with that level of respect anymore? Something to think about. The way we portray objects of veneration and the way we present ourselves reflects an attitude, whatever that may be. Okay, so the historian Pliny said, this was superior to all the works, not only of Praxiteles, but indeed of the whole world. This is the best statue in the entire world, according to Pliny. This statue made the island of Knidos famous, although they bought it after another city didn't want it. But that city was kicking itself later, because Knidos became a tourist attraction. I mean, this statue became a tourist attraction. People went there just to see it. They built a temple for it where it wasn't in a niche, but you could go all the way around and check it out because it was so wonderful. And I'm sure they made some tourist bucks off of this. A 2nd century Roman, Lucian, said she had a welcoming look, a slight smile, and there was a dewy quality in her eyes. Might be hard for us to judge because we haven't seen the original. Maybe the original is buried somewhere. Maybe we'll find it. But anyway, the Aphrodite of Knidos. And is there an Aphrodite, except we call it a Venus, that's super famous that you're probably familiar with? You think of Greek statues, is there something that pops in your head because you see pictures of it a lot?
You said Venus, like the Venus flytrap, but that's about it.
Not the flytrap. I will give you a hint. She's missing limbs. Yeah, yes, very much like that one. That's just something my daughter made. But the Venus de Milo. The Venus of Milos. Milos, that same island, where they said the strong do what they can and the weak suffer what they must. And we always think of that, it's the most wonderful, she's so beautiful. Apparently this was the statue. Anyway, that is the story of the Aphrodite of Knidos. Carved, the original, during Plato's lifetime. All right, let's take a look at what Socrates has to say. But I want to start with the question, just it's not a random question, but a question not with reference to this. Do you think it matters what kind of music we listen to? Why?
Kind of influences how you think, and like the same thing with what you watch. It's just, you gotta be respectful of everything you watch and listen to, because if you're around that a lot, then that's just kind of how you're gonna act, think, and it's just gonna kind of influence.
Okay. Would we all agree with that? That a steady diet of the wrong sorts of things affects your soul. Um, it's easy enough, I think, for us to think, okay, what kind of things should we not be watching? What kind of movies? That's a little easier to judge. Sometimes there's a fine line, but it's a little easier. But what kind of songs should we not be listening to? What is there about a song that you might say, yeah, I don't think that's something I should be listening to? What about it might be objectionable?
The lyrics,
The lyrics. And why? Why?
because they can say all sorts of things.
Because sometimes they say terrible things. And that sort of language gets into your soul and your mind. Does anybody disagree with that in any way? We're going to find out today whether Socrates agrees with that or not. He does some, but he disagrees some. In kind of a very surprising way for modern people. Not just young, everybody. All right, we will get there. But first, let us remind ourselves that at the end of Book 2, he was discussing things we can't have in our city. And poetry, specifically, that we can't have. Does anybody remember what kinds of things was he objecting to in Book 2, and why was he objecting to them?
Songs that or poetry and stuff that didn't promote bravery and all good stuff.
Okay. Remember what we have in our city. We've decided that we are not content. We didn't decide this. Glaucon and Adeimantus decided. They don't want to have a city where people just live in little huts and roast acorns. And he says, that's the life of pigs. That's what you feed pigs. They got to have couches to lie on while they eat and have parties and desserts and drinks and whatnot. And Socrates says, oh, I see. So it's not just what he calls the healthy city. We need a luxurious city. He says, so we're going to need some doctors, aren't we? Because these people are going to get sick because they eat the wrong kinds of foods. And we're not going to have enough resources to produce everything these people want. So maybe we're just going to have to take some from our neighbor. Maybe our neighbor's going to want to take some from us. Therefore, we're going to need an army. We're going to need people to guard our city. So we're calling them the guardians. And what do we want from our guardians? We need them to be educated in a way that will make them a certain sort of person. Like I said, we don't want cowards. We have guardians that run away when there's a battle. So we can't have poetry that encourages cowardice. We don't want poetry that encourages flouting the rules and flouting the laws, like pointing out that the gods do this frequently. No, Homer, we can't have that. And he starts Book 3 talking about other things we can't have in our poetry. And I guess, does anybody have anything to add for that first question before I launch into this? Just that it encourages the guardians to be cowardly, lazy, fierce, whatever. He says, we can't have poetry that says that Hades' domain is unpleasant. And then he quotes Achilles in the Odyssey. Odysseus, you might remember, goes to the underworld and he meets Achilles. He says, oh, Achilles, you're awesome. You guys were awesome. Looks like you've got quite a following down here. And he says, I would rather be on the soil, a serf to another, to a man without lot, whose means of life are not great, than rule over all the dead who have perished. I'd rather be a slave to the lowest class guy and still be alive than rule over all the dead. Because it stinks here. Socrates says, no, we can't have that. And why not? He lists a bunch of things that make it sound like Hades' house is very bad. Why would we not want that?
People are afraid to die.
Then you'll be afraid to die. You'll be afraid to go there. We can't have that. So we can't call it fearful names. We have to call it good names. We can't have people who don't take truth seriously. We have to have moderation. What is moderation, by the way? He talks a lot about having moderation in this book. What does it mean to be moderate in anything?
Like not overdoing it.
In which direction?
Like doing too much of something.
Is that the only thing?
Or doing too little.
Or doing too little? Being just right, like the Goldilocks was looking for the mean, right? This one's too hot, this one's too cold, this one's just right. This one's too hard, this one's too soft. That's the mean, right? Moderation. So, do we want to eat too little? No, because then we'll become weak and sickly. Do we want to eat too much? No, because then we'll become fat and lazy. we have to go somewhere in the middle. So he says we need poetry that teaches moderation. So I suppose we'll assert that it's fine to say the sort of thing Diomedes says in Homer, "Friend, keep quiet and obey my word." Be moderate. Know when to speak and when to listen. He says, what about this? Heavy with wine, with eyes of a dog and heart of a deer. He says, no. Don't want to celebrate drunkards. The tables are full of bread and meat, and the wine bearer draws wine from the bowl. And no, we can't have feasting in our poetry. We don't want them to be receivers of gifts or lovers of money. He said, so what do we do with Achilles giving Hector's body back after Priam pays him money for it? We don't like that. What do we do with Phoenix? Do you remember they sent 3 guys to Achilles to say, oh, Achilles, please come back and fight. And Phoenix was his old caretaker, the guy who helped raise him. Phoenix says, look, Achilles, don't forget the story of the guy who wouldn't fight, and they offered him a bunch of stuff, boatloads of cash, and he said no. Then he went out and fought, and then after he was done, he said, yeah, we're not giving you the stuff because you didn't do it when we asked you to. You don't want to be like that, Achilles. While Agamemnon is offering you stuff, you better do it. Socrates says, do we want to encourage that sort of thing? Take the money and run. Is that what? No. We're going to have to cut that part out too, because we don't want our guardians to take bribes. We don't want them to think about luxury and money. He says if we teach them that the gods do these things, everyone will be sympathetic with himself when he is bad. Persuaded that after all similar things are done, and were done even by, and then he quotes, the close relations of gods near to Zeus. Quotes again from Homer. Homer gets ripped. And it's hard for us to understand what it would have been like to read this. Because today, people learn from all sorts of books. We have all sorts of textbooks. Homer was the school book. He was the school book. Everybody learned from Homer. You learned how to speak well, how to write well. One person even said, everything you ever need to learn you can find in Homer. This was not a Christian. This was a pagan Greek educator. Examples, all good examples, all bad examples. Everything we need to know about the gods, everything we need to know about language can be found in Homer. Plato here is having Socrates diss the primary textbook of Greece. I'm not sure everybody would have liked that. All right. Why? Let me see if there's anything in between here that I don't want to skip. Um, there is something in here I don't want to skip. What order I want to do that? Let's do this first. So you might remember he said, how are they going to be trained? Music and gymnastic, right? Music meant everything that comes from the muses, and gymnastic is obviously physical training. He says we will have to supervise the poets and compel them to impress the image of the good disposition on their poems. So Glaucon, I said, isn't this why the rearing in music is most sovereign? Because rhythm and harmony most of all insinuate themselves into the inmost part of the soul and most vigorously lay hold of it in bringing grace with them. And they make a man graceful if he is correctly reared, if not the opposite. Furthermore, it is sovereign, rearing in music, rearing in rhythm and harmony. It is sovereign because the man properly reared on rhythm and harmony would have the sharpest sense for what's been left out and what isn't a fine product of craft, or what isn't a fine product of nature. And due to this having the right kind of dislikes, he would praise the fine things, and taking pleasure in them and receiving them into his soul, he would be reared on them and become a gentleman. He would blame and hate the ugly right away while he's still young, before he's able to grasp reasonable speech. Right. What are the two things he's mentioned several times? They need to be raised on music with the right what? Because rhythm and harmony most insinuate themselves. Then he says, it is sovereign because the man properly reared on rhythm and harmony would have the sharpest sense of what's good and what's bad. What is he concerned with? Rhythm and harmony. And listen to when he says this affects you. He would blame and hate the ugly in the right way while he's still young, before he's able to grasp reasonable speech. All right, keep that in mind. I want to read one more thing. He says, they must beware of change to a strange form of music, taking it to be a danger to the whole. For never are the ways of music moved without the greatest political laws being moved. What did we say just 10 minutes ago that we were concerned with about the music that we listened to? What? The lyrics. What does Socrates think it is? Well, the sounds, the very sounds of the music. He said it affects you before you even understand the lyrics. It doesn't matter what the lyrics are. This really comes as a shock to us because we tend to think exactly. I mean, if you asked anybody, they'd say exactly what Liam said. If you had asked me 5 years ago, I would have said what Liam said before I started reading a lot in the ancients. They cared about the music. Pythagoras, and yes, it's the Pythagorean theorem, Pythagoras, that guy, is credited with being the first one to discover the mathematical relationship between sounds that are pleasing together, between things that harmonize. And there is a mathematical relationship. It's all math. And he tells stories about situations in which, say there's a bar fight, right? That sort of situation. And someone came in and played a certain sort of music and calmed things down. Likewise, people that are just a little sluggish, you can stir them up with the right kind of music. Not the right kind of lyrics, the right kind of music. Now, I'm not going to say Socrates is right. I'm not going to say we're right. But I am going to just make an observation. We seem to think today that we can take a tune or music and just stick better words into it and it's fine. Plato would have said, that music is bad to its core. And it doesn't matter what lyrics you sing to it. It doesn't matter whether it has lyrics or not. It's bad. It's bad for your soul. And it's just something for us to think about. Because we're surrounded by music. Grocery stores. I tell you, I love the music in the grocery stores. Because it's all for me. You know, wait 10 years and it'll be all for you. The playlist at Hy-Vee is my world. I'm dancing down the aisle. I'm walking to the beat. I'm like, I love this song. And I'm mouthing. But see, I was raised this way too. With bad music. Not bad lyrics. Sometimes bad lyrics. But bad music. Your average pop music. It's not good. It's just not fine music. So I don't even know I don't have good enough taste to tell what is good. That's the sad thing. Anyway, I'm just throwing this out here. Socrates said in the Apology that he was the gadfly of Athens, right? To sting them and stir them up. He's the gadfly of us too. Is this a Christian man? No. Did he have a lot of wisdom and insight? I believe he did. But it's good for us to know that not every time and place has thought that just it doesn't matter what the music is if you like it. If it stirs your emotions up, great. But we never stop to ask, should my emotions be stirred up by this kind of music? All right, that's enough. I won't preach on, and this is not an indictment of any particular music that any of you might be listening to, because I can guarantee you I'm going to go for a walk later and I'm just going to listen to my 80s playlist. It's not good, but it's it because it was raised poorly. Anyway, but I find this really, really interesting because he said when the music of a society changes, the laws in the society change. And we laugh now, and I've been among those who laugh at the naysayers of, well, like 40s big band and jazz. Like, oh, I don't know, it's not so good. And now, it was shocking at the time. And now we're like, it's fine. Then Elvis Presley is like, oh, he's like the devil. And now we think it's very tame. But at the time it was shocking. You see, but did that music change or did we change? Did we change to the point where we'll accept anything and call it music? Don't know. Did it change up? These are good things for us to think about as we navigate the world. And good things for you guys to think about because you're young enough to, I don't know, make changes in your life. If you feel like changes are necessary, it's very hard for me to make the changes, although I'm trying. All right, so this is what he has to say about music. Let's hit the next question. The question after that is related to what we're talking about. But why does he think it's shameful to have lots of doctors and lawyers? We touched on this last week. What does that say about a society that has doctors and lawyers just everywhere? They're weak. Why doctors and lawyers? What's the connection?
Lawyers means that people everybody hates each other and wants to sue each other.
Okay.
They're using lawyers.
And doctors means?
They're sick all the time.
They're sick all the time. Okay. So he says, when licentiousness and illness, licentiousness is basically just unrestrained wanting. Unrestrained wanting of pleasures, whatever those may be. When these multiply in a city, aren't many courts and hospitals opened? And aren't the arts of the law court and medicine full of pride when even many free men take them very seriously? He said, which is worse? He says, need medicine, not because one has met with wounds or some of the seasonal maladies, but as a result of idleness and a way of life such as we described, full of humors and winds like a marsh. He says things that didn't even exist generations ago because people didn't live that way. We have to make up names for illnesses that people do to themselves. He says, is that worse? Or he says, when someone not only wastes most of his life in courtrooms, defending and accusing, but from inexperience in fair things. Inexperience in fair things. Remember what this training is going to do? Teach them what is fine and what isn't fine. Inexperience in fair things is also persuaded to pride himself on this very thing because he's clever at doing injustice and competent at practicing every dodge, ignorant of how much finer and better it is to arrange his life so as to have no need of a judge. These people today read in Athens today. They don't know. They don't know what's good. So they spend their whole life at the doctor and the court. Okay. So our guardians are going to get that good, old-fashioned music and gymnastic training to work their bodies and work their souls. So says Glaucon and Adeimantus. Socrates says, why do we have these two arts? Well, obviously, to be physically strong and to be sound in your soul. Socrates doesn't agree. This is the next question. What good is both physical training and intellectual? They're both for your soul. Exercise is for your soul. So says Socrates. He said, look, but let's read the next question too. So what happens to a person who only works out and doesn't cultivate any intellectual pursuits?
Savageness.
Savage. Henley's smiling. We can all picture that sort, right? Like,
The average gym bro.
okay, yes, exactly. Like sort of a little dense, sort of a little clueless, super like with the arms that he can't even put his arms down on his side, right? That's why they walk around like this, because their muscles won't, not really. But I'm picturing that. And he clueless about anything but working out. And maybe a little on the violent side, maybe a little on the hot-tempered side. Now, I didn't ask you this. Socrates explores it. So the opposite. The guy who reads all day and, I don't know, like, I'm getting a little worried, sips his tea and doesn't want to work out at all.
Softness.
He's a wimp. He's a total wimp. Can't do anything. He's got book smarts, we would say. He's a total pushover. And when Mr. Jim comes up, he's a goner. And so the one is soft and wimpy, and the other is fierce and savage. Where do fierce and savage reside? Is fierceness in your body? It's in your soul, isn't it? Now, I am sure we can all think of examples of people who work out frequently and are not savage. But, so he's exaggerating maybe a little for effect. But the point is well taken, that would assert that some god gave two arts to human beings for these two things, it seems: music and gymnastic for the spirited and the philosophic, not for soul and body, except incidentally, but rather for these two. He wanted to, the God who gave us both these things, gave us our schooling, said, I want to harmonize your soul. I want you to have a little bit of both. You got to have a little bit of both. You can't just be one or the other. Okay, this is where he wraps up book 3, but he makes a slight change. Up till now, we've been calling all these people the guardians, the soldiers. But he said, you know, some of these guardians, we're going to test them. We're going to push them to the limits. We're going to see if we put them in hard situations, tempting situations, tempting in both ways, right? Either tempting them to be soft and not courageous and run away from battle, or tempted to be more savage than they should be. We're gonna put them purposely in these situations and see what they do. Picture a group of kids, right? They're a little younger than you, maybe. Maybe they're your age. Like, hey, everybody, today's the day we're all going out to watch the battle. And they go, 2 of you ran away. Right? Not good. Today, we are all going to memorize 5 propositions of Euclid in geometry. And some of you are just, out of here. Okay, but the ones of you that stick around for both and can do it, I'm sorry, but you're better than the rest. I don't know how to say it. You're now going to be promoted to full-out guardians. And those, your other ones, you're good. You got, potential. You'll be the auxiliaries, right? You'll be under the leadership of the guardians. The guardians now have been promoted to what we would call rulers. They're in charge. And the auxiliaries are the rank and file soldiery, who are better than the average. You've been trained in music and gymnastic, but you just didn't quite have what it takes when it came to the test. This is going to happen, said Socrates. So he says we will call them auxiliaries, the ones who aren't quite as good at these things, and the others guardians. Okay, and he says, and they will, where's his description? First, no one will possess any private property except for what's entirely necessary. He means the guardians, not anybody in the city, just the guardians. Second, no one will have any house or storeroom into which everyone who wishes cannot come. The sustenance, as much as is needed by moderate and courageous men who are champions of war, they'll receive in fixed installments from the other citizens as a wage for their guarding, in such quantity that there will be no surplus for them in a year and no lack either. They'll go regularly to mess together like soldiers in a camp and live a life in common. We'll tell them that gold and silver of a divine sort from the gods they have in their soul always, and have no further need of the human sort. It's not holy to pollute the possession of the former sort by mixing it with the possession of the mortal sort. No private property. They don't have any gold or silver. They're given everything they need by the state. They eat all their meals in common together, and not fancy meals either. Does this sound anything like a group of people we've already met this year? What group of people?
Spartans.
The Spartans. Socrates just made the guardians live like Spartans. Just like Spartans. After many, many weeks of Athens fighting Sparta, it might surprise you that Sparta had some fans in Athens. In fact, one guy got in trouble in Athens for naming his kids Spartan-sounding names. And he was like, he's a Spartan lover. You know, I mean, like it was a negative epithet to call somebody a Spartan lover, because they saw that it was a very stable city that worked, right? It worked over a long period of time. And we saw Athens, right? We decided this. Next day we decided that. No, we're getting rid of these people and they're in charge. No, we're getting rid of them now and now they're in charge. Oh, we changed our minds again. But Sparta, despite the fact that there were some negatives about Sparta, like we take your children away when they're 7 and put them in the barracks and make them steal things to eat, but they had a very stable government. And some people in Athens kind of envied that. So Socrates sets up this Spartan environment for them. Also, he decides to tell everyone a big fat lie. So we're getting to the point where we're praising Socrates too much, maybe. He says, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're gonna nab a bunch of kids and raise them this way. That's how we're going to start our city, right? Because their parents are bad influences, right? What?
Just use the thrown out ones.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, that would have been such a good idea, Liam. Maybe that's where they're going to gather them. Gather the thrown out kids, and then we're going to raise them this way. But then we're going to sort them out, right? We're going to put them all this test, and some of them aren't going to be able to hack the education we're going to give them at all, and they're just going to become artisans and merchants. They're going to be the money-making class because we need them. We need people to sell food and grow food and make shoes and whatnot, and it's an honorable thing. Then we're going to have these auxiliaries and these guardians. But as they get older, here's what we're going to tell them. Look, all your education that you thought you had, that was a dream. You dreamed that. Actually, you just sprang out of the ground yesterday. Y'all just sprang out of the ground. And here's the interesting thing about you. The gods made you underground. I don't know who's going to buy this. The gods made you underground. And in some of you, he mixed gold. That's what he was talking about, the gold in your nature. You have the gold in your nature, so you don't need tangible gold. You're the guardians. You're the best. And you've got to guard that gold. You've got to be careful because you are the golden people. Now, you auxiliaries, you're the silver people. You're not quite so good as the gold, but you're good. And then those other guys, they just sort of like have bronze and lead and iron and whatnot, you know, in various configurations, and they're not so good. And so we have to watch carefully our children, because he said usually gold people are going to have gold children, silver, but not always. Some bronze guy could have a gold child. Some gold guy could have an iron child. So you got to watch the children. We got to take them all through this education and watch them and see. And I'm sorry, if you're iron, you're demoted. I don't care who your parents are. And if you're gold, you are promoted. We'll just pretend that that's what's going on so that they will believe this lie. Sometimes it's referred to as the noble lie, because he wants to start this good thing. But he's starting it with a lie. I'll just throw that out there and let you think about that. All right. In the beginning of Book 4, after he's described the Spartan barracks, Adeimantus interrupts and says, "What would your apology be, Socrates, if someone were to say that you're hardly making these men happy? And further, that it's their own fault. They to whom the city in truth belongs, they're the rulers, but who enjoy nothing good from the city as the others do. The lower class, the iron, bronze people, they can own nice houses, they can have gold, they can have nice clothes. These guardians, they live a stripped down, bare minimum life. That doesn't seem very fair." First question, Why is Socrates unconcerned that the guardians of his city seem to lack what makes men happy?
Well, it'll like get them lazy and fat and turn them into not strong and courageous guardians.
Okay, one reason is because this is what will be good for them. What's another reason he doesn't care?
Because they're looking for a happy city, not happy individuals.
We are looking for a happy city, not happy individuals. This also doesn't resonate very well with us today. Not in the United States anyway, right? Is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? That we value our individual happiness and our individual freedom. And the idea that we all have to do our part to make the whole thing happy sounds a little bit not communist, but we're socialist, we're moving that direction, right? It's all for the common good. Sartre says this is the way it's going to be. If we want these guys to be worthy rulers, he said, and what city would be better than a city with worthy rulers? They're going to have to live a certain way. Or else they're going to, what Eliot said, get fat and lazy and luxurious, and they're not going to be good rulers anymore. And they're going to either become savage or soft, or both at different times. So the one great thing they have to guard against is, or that they have to guard, not guard against. What do they have to guard most of all? I even told you what paragraph to find it in.
But education and rearing.
Education. He says they have to guard the one great thing, their education and rearing. If by being well educated they become sensible men, they'll easily see to all this, everything that they have to do, and everything else we are now leaving out, that the possession of women, marriage, and procreation of children must as far as possible be arranged according to the proverb that friends have all things in common, and the regime, once started, will roll on like a circle in its growth. For sound rearing and education, when they are preserved, produce good natures. And sound natures, in their turn, receiving such an education, grow up still better than those before them. Education is key. And right after this is where he says that the ways of music are not changed without changing a city. Do we believe this today? Mrs. Kreiner and I might know more because we probably read more about education and think about education than you do. You do what your parents tell you to do, largely. But do you think, in general, people today believe that education is all important and is everything? Why would you say no, Miriam?
The school system's not good.
Okay, because there's a reason that you're all homeschooled. In general, the school systems are not very good. And when we say, if your parents say, oh, the school's no good, I don't want you to go there. And I'm not saying all schools are no good either. But what are they thinking? In what way no good or not good?
It doesn't align with what they think.
Okay, first of all, the ideas. So this would go in with the music, music in the sense of the poetry, right? That children, young people, should be exposed to only certain types of things that will make them a certain type of person. So we want to tell them stories that will build them up. Stories about telling the truth and doing the right thing. We want to tell them stories of George Washington and the cherry tree and I cannot tell a lie, and how Lincoln walks for miles to return the change to whoever it is he gave the wrong amount of change to when he worked at the store. And wherever. What's the place near Charleston? Lincoln Log Cabin? But that's not the, obviously it wasn't called Lincoln Log Cabin when Lincoln was living. Yeah, if you know the story. We want that sort of story that encourage uprightness and would say how bad Benedict Arnold was. And we used to do that sort of thing, right? That there are heroes and there are villains. And you guys, I won't get off on this for too long, but you know, some of you know how I feel because I've mentioned it repeatedly about stories where the villain is just misunderstood. I mean, it might be amusing. It's quite entertaining to think about a story from the point of view of another character. I think it's very entertaining, but it's also highly dangerous. Because that villain is in the story for a reason, to teach you that there is evil, evil exists, and evil should be overcome. It shouldn't be negotiated with, and it shouldn't be understood. It should be fled, right? So that's something they object to. The content. Well, no, I'm not going to pursue that line of thought. I would like to pursue that line of thought with Mrs. Kreger sometime, but this is not good. All right, let's move on because we're finally going to get to the thing we did this all for. Somebody remind me, why are we making up a city? To find justice. We wanted to find justice in a soul, remember. After Thrasymachus had his fit, his tantrum, and said how justice is just the power of the stronger, the right of the stronger to order other people around and call it justice. Socrates says, okay, well, maybe dissecting a single individual, not literally, metaphorically dissecting, is a little difficult. But cities are bigger than people. So maybe if we find justice in a city, we can find it in a person. So he starts the look and he says, well, basically there's 4 really important things. Everybody knows these important things. They're called the cardinal virtues. Wisdom, courage, moderation, and justice. Sometimes moderation is called temperance when they list these. These are the 4 main virtues that the Greeks thought were all important. He said, but why don't we look for all of them? Should we just look for justice? Oh, let's look for all of them. Where is wisdom?
In council.
In council. And whose council?
The city's council.
Yeah, you mean like the physical council. And who are the members of the council?
The city council.
Yes, but does everybody in the city, in the council, like in Athens, there was a city council and everybody took turns being in it by lot. Is that what we mean? The guardians in council together, right? We don't let those bronze and iron people be in our council. Wisdom is in the rulers who are the perfect guardians, who have been tested and found to pass every test. Great. Where is courage to be found? This one's pretty easy. In the soldiers, the guardians and the auxiliaries who have to go out and fight. Where is moderation found? This one's a little harder to follow.
I put in harmony.
In harmony. Do you know what is in harmony? You're right. What kind of harmony? Like people working together so that the better rules over the worse. Again, we don't like the sound of that. We're very, everybody deserves a chance and everybody gets a turn. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. But the Greeks, Socrates and Plato, they were willing to recognize something that we don't enjoy recognizing, is some people are just better at something than others. Some people are just better. And some people are just better people. They're wiser. They're more they're more moderate. They're more controlled, self-controlled, right? Star. So this is where he finds moderation in the city, where people act together in harmony, in proportion. So where is justice? Or what is justice in our city?
Everybody works together.
Everybody works together in a certain way. Because that's kind of what we said for moderation, too. In what exact way do we all work together? Minding their own, he says, the practice of minding one's own business. Now, that's what our translation says. We do not use that in a nice way. Mind your own business is usually not a nice thing to say. It means butt out. Butt out where you don't belong. That's not what this means. He literally means minding your own business. He says, remember at the beginning, we decided, instead of having this person farm for 20% of his time, make clothes for 20% of his time, make shoes for 20% of his time, he's going to farm all, I don't know what he's doing for the other 40%. He's going to farm all the time. Someone else is going to make shoes all the time. Someone else is going to make clothes all the time. And they will devote themselves to one task. So the auxiliaries are only auxiliaries. The guardians are only guardians. The storekeeper is only a storekeeper. And he says this minding one's own business is what's left over. We've found the wisdom, we found the moderation, we found the courage. Does that sound strange to anybody? That justice is taking care of your own business? Strikes me. Miriam doesn't think it sounds right. What? I see. I can't ask you why not. What would be the answer to that question? How does it seem just to you? Like, how does that smack of justice to you?
Everybody's living more harmoniously because they're all just doing what they're supposed to.
You're doing what you're supposed to do. But yet justice, I'll say it to me, means like Euthyphro. I'm taking you to court because you did something bad and you're going to get punished. I want see justice. But if you think about it, I suppose, if everyone were doing what they were supposed to do and not meddling in affairs that they're not supposed to meddle in, there would be justice.
Would that be justice, though? If no one did anything, is that...
Well, did your own thing. Took care of your own thing. If we trusted, so if, can you think of a concrete example of what you're thinking?
If everyone just does their own thing, nothing's happening to create justice. You're just minding your own business.
Mm-hmm.
Versus, like, if someone does something wrong and you took them to court or something, that's justice because they did something wrong. You're doing something right. Okay. Which the link in between would be justice.
Okay, so what did this person, let's hypothetically, what might they do wrong?
They punched somebody.
They punched someone. This is good for us to think about this.
But that's not justice then. That's just them not doing it.
So somebody punches someone else.
But everybody's doing right and doing their own things.
It'd be the lack of unjustice that would make it just.
But if it's a lack of there's no justice.
Liam, I need to ask you something. Did he punch this person just randomly because he's just that sort of person, or did the other person do something to bring it on?
They got in a fight.
But so.
If you took him to court, that wouldn't be justice.
But that doesn't answer my question.
Let's say you punched him without a reason.
Okay, punched him without a reason. So the person who did the punching is being overly fierce.
Yeah.
Is not being moderate. Well, then the education in our city has failed. So we're going to have to go back to the beginning and fix whatever it is in our educational system. I'm speaking like Socrates now.
Yeah.
I don't. People do bad things. And I don't know that education can fix that. We need more. That's why we need Jesus, right? But I'm going to be Socrates here for a minute. I think he would say, well, what if failure in education made this person fierce so that they punch someone, well, then the whole city has now failed because the educational system is producing people like that.
But is that justice though? Like,
No, there's a failure of justice, but there's a failure of justice because we didn't guard the one great thing, education.
but that still doesn't answer the other question.
I realize that. And you're right. I'm arguing with you, but I'm not arguing with you. I see your point exactly.
Yeah.
And I will be honest with you. I ask you the question, does this seem right? Because I mean, I've read The Republic many times at this point. I know you'll go like at least somewhere between 7 and 10 times. And I always find new stuff. It always speaks to me. But every time I hit this, I'm like, yeah, justice is everybody doing their own job. What? Now, it really is going to work well when we move into the individual soul. And it's quite possible that Plato needed justice to be this, which is a little manipulative of him. I mean, this isn't the Bible. This isn't inspired. We can argue with it. We can pick it apart and say, I don't agree with that. It's totally fine. Which is what we're going to spend the rest of our time here, moving into the individual soul. What does this look like? It doesn't work unless this is the definition of justice in the city. So it's a bit like an author writing a fiction story, and they've got to arrange, you want such and such to happen, and you got to set it up, and maybe the things you do to set it up are implausible. But if you don't set it up that way, it won't work. The plot won't work. I feel a little bit like this. So Liam, I feel your pain. Whenever I hit this, I'm like, okay. But I do think that what I answered would be what Socrates would say, that you've got bigger problems than justice. Because remember what he said over and over about people running to law courts. You wouldn't be running to court if you guarded the one great thing, the education. It wouldn't even exist. So he's assuming that you're never going to have situations like that if things operate the way they're supposed to operate. Now, I'm gonna throw something out there that I don't know if he ever says in the Republic or not, if Plato says this, if he has Socrates say it. But in other places I know Socrates says, people only do the wrong thing because of ignorance. If they knew the right thing, they would do it. Now, on the surface, that sounds like, no, I so disagree with that. But let me give an example. Let's use something that's not even moral, okay? Just something. I decide to go on the all lettuce diet because I really want to lose weight, all right? And I am ignorant of the fact that lettuce does not provide everything I need to live for a long term. It's not sustainable. And so I just start only eating lettuce, and I've made a bad decision. I've done the wrong thing. It's because I'm ignorant. If I were knowledgeable about nutrition, then I would make a better choice. All right? That's sort of what he means by ignorance. I'm ignorant of what is good. Okay, so I rob a bank. Let's do something more. And why would I rob a bank?
You want money.
Obviously, because I want money. And why do I want this money so bad that I would want to steal it and take a chance of being shot by the police or incarceration for a really long period of time? What do I think about money?
It's important.
It's super important. Man, I want money more than anything else. And Socrates would say it's ignorance. The problem with the bank robber is he's ignorant of what's really good. He thinks money is the best thing. He's ignorant. He's not bad, he's just ignorant. This is Socrates, okay? So I feel like in a parallel way, when we're dealing with this justice, if someone makes a decision like punching someone, Socrates said, well, they're ignorant. They're ignorant of what is really good, which is living in harmony. And so there's been a failure of training and education because they've mistaken one good for another good, or a bad for a good. Does that make sense? And I don't know. I have trouble with that. I mean, I think all Christians would have trouble with that. Because we know very well that we make conscious decisions to do wrong things. Hopefully, as we progress in our spiritual lives as Christians, we do that less and less, would be the goal. But we're never going to be utterly free of it and be in this body. Just doing it less and less and less and less would be the goal. And working towards conquering that. So there's a, some of you read The Unaborted Socrates with me, right? There's another book by Peter Kraft, and it's called Socrates Meets Jesus. It's very cool. Same sort of deal. He doesn't actually meet Jesus. He comes to a Bible study. Socrates comes to a modern Bible study. And so he's there trying to learn about this person, Jesus, and this story and everything. And they take a break and they go out to a vending machine. And one of the girls in the Bible study is getting a candy bar out of the vending machine. And she says, oh, these are terrible. This is terrible for me, but I love them. Socrates, wait a minute. You know that is bad for you. She says, oh yeah, it's totally bad for me. But you are going to choose to eat it. Oh yeah, I'm going to eat it. Why would you eat it if you know it's bad for you? Because it's good, Socrates. Because it's good. Now I suppose if I think that's this thought trails off in the book, and Socrates is suddenly wondering if ignorance is the root of all bad choices. But he could also say, at that moment, she's mistaken one good for another. The good of being healthy doesn't seem as important as the good of having that taste in your mouth right now. Or taking the edge off your hunger. Whatever. Because Snickers satisfies. Or she's uneducated about nutrition. But she's not, because she knows it's bad for her. Yes. Yes. Anyway. Okay. Let's move on to what was the real goal, the individual soul. Now, he has found in the city 3 classes of people. He calls them the money-making. This is the rank and file people who do the everyday life that is required in a city. The auxiliaries, the soldiers, and the guardian classes. And we decided justice is each of them staying in their own lanes, minding what they are to mind. What 3 parts does he find in a soul? This is the next question.
The learning part, the spirited part, and the pleasure part.
The learning part, the spirited part, and the pleasure. He calls them spiritedness and love of learning and love of money. And he says, okay, we know we have all these aspects, but do we act in each of these ways as a result of the same part of ourselves? Or are there 3 parts? And with a different one, we act in each of the different ways. He says, okay, is it the same thing or different things in us? And he gives some examples. So, let's go back to the girl with the candy bar. This is not in here, obviously. Her learning part knows and has read the ingredient list on the Snickers bar. It's fully informed. Her desiring part puts that money in the vending machine and buys it and eats it. Are those two working together or are they working opposite each other?
Against each other.
They're really working against each other. And which one won?
Pleasure.
The pleasure part. Even though he calls it the money-making part often. A pleasure part would be a much better description because all the things that money can buy, right? All right. So we see that sometimes the learning part, the thinking part, and the wanting part can be at odds. Let's take another example. I am an auxiliary, and I'm going to be in my first battle. Without, when I was young, they used to take me to the battle and show me so I wouldn't be afraid later. And I'm not afraid. I've had a good training, right? I'm not going anywhere. But nonetheless, there's butterflies in my stomach, right? I'm nervous. What if I want to run away? But my mind says, you're going to stay. Is it going to hurt to get killed? What's going to happen? There's another part of me that I got to get into the picture to help me do what I got to do. Which part is that? The spirited, the one we haven't, the one that, and sometimes the spirited has to be recruited, right? Recruited by the thinking part to get me fired up. If it gets recruited by the wrong part, it just works me up to eat more candy bars. Or punch somebody in the face. That would be the spirited run amok, right? My thinking says, yeah, this is a bad idea and I can get in trouble for this. And maybe my pleasure part says, you don't want to do that. It's going to hurt your hand. Plus, what if he punches you back? But the spirited says, I don't care. I'm hitting him. So he finds these three parts. He says the part of the soul with which it calculates, the part with which it loves, hungers, thirsts, and is agitated by desires, and the part that contains spirit. If everybody minding their own business is justice in the city, what is justice in the soul?
Injustice, or because the question said you were asking the question.
What causes an individual soul to be just?
I put
The three classes. Doing what?
He has
Yeah. So what was justice in the city? It has three classes, but what do those three classes have to do?
They have to mind their business.
What do the three parts of your soul have to do to be a just person?
Harmonize.
Or
Moderation.
mind their own business.
Yeah, I see.
So in addition to that, what would an unjust soul look like?
Gets angry and hunts like a dog for justice. Which is kind of the example they used.
Okay. Yeah, the guy who punches people because his spirited part is in charge. The glutton, whose desiring part, and it could be gluttony for anything, you know what I mean? The hoarder, the greedy person, whatever, has run amok. Because it's the job of the thinking part, the guardian part, to be the guardian, to rule. It's the job of the auxiliary, the spirited part, to obey it. And it's the job of the desiring part to obey both and keep itself in check and stay in its own lane. Do you like this any better, Liam?
It works a little bit better.
It works a little bit better, which is why I wonder if he had to make it that in the city, or it wouldn't work in the soul.
Yeah, but if you make the wrong definition of the city, then
Well, it does. It makes the rest of it suspect, doesn't it? So he says, in truth, well, I don't want to read that part. Just a second. Okay. He says, I suppose injustice must be considered. So this is more of the second part of the question. Mustn't it, injustice, in turn be a certain faction among those three, a meddling, interference, and rebellion of a part of the soul against the whole? The purpose of the rebellious part is to rule the soul, although that is not proper, since by nature it is fit to be a slave to that which belongs to the ruling class. Something of this sort, I suppose, we'll say, and that the confusion and wandering of these parts are injustice, licentiousness, cowardice, lack of learning, and in some, vice entire. So, the healthy and just soul is in order, and the unhealthy, unjust soul isn't. Just a second. I want to see if I want to. Virtue, then, as it seems, would be a certain health, beauty, and good condition of a soul, and vice, a sickness, ugliness, and weakness. Now, he says it now remains for us to consider whether it is profitable to do just things, practice fine ones, and be just. Let's go back to book 1. Remember how we started this. What is justice? Giving to people what you owe them. Well, we don't like that. We shoot that down. Oh, well, giving people what they deserve. Hurting your enemies and helping your friends. And they go through that. They go, all of this. Finally, Thrasymachus has his meltdown and says, it's just the stronger people make stuff up that's good for them. Justice is the advantage of the stronger. And they tried to shoot that down. And then remember, Adeimantus came and said, all right, I really want to be convinced that justice is better. So let's put the perfectly just man against the perfectly unjust man and compare them and see which one's more profitable. He says everyone will say the perfectly just man, because remember, the perfectly just man, no one thinks he's just. His good reputation has been taken away. All he has is justice. Everybody's going to beat him up and they will crucify him, right? So, Socrates says, so now we have our final question, whether it is profitable to do just things, practice fine ones, and be just, whether or not one's being such remains unnoticed, or whether it is profitable to do injustice and be unjust, which was Thrasymachus's position, provided one doesn't pay the penalty and become better as a result of punishment. But Socrates, he said, that inquiry looks to me as though it has become ridiculous by now. If life doesn't seem livable with the body's nature corrupted, not even with every sort of food and drink and every sort of wealth and every sort of rule, will it then be livable when the nature of that very thing by which we live is confused and corrupted, even if a man does whatever else he might want, except that which will rid him of vice and injustice and will enable him to acquire justice and virtue? Isn't this clear now, that all of these qualities have manifested their characters in our description? If the only healthy city is the one that's ruled well, and the only healthy soul is the one that's ruled well by the part that's supposed to be in charge, and the other is unhealthy, sick, feeble, ugly, no matter what it has, no matter what it looks like on the outside. He said, this is now a stupid question. Which one is more profitable? Obviously, justice is more profitable. It makes you a better person. It makes you healthy. It is the health of the soul. Just like you say, which one would you rather be? The chronically ill person or the healthy person? Nobody's going to have to think hard about this at all. we're all going to totally want to be healthy. It's painfully obvious. And he says basically the question in book 1 was, would you rather have a chronically ill soul or a healthy one? That's what it's turned out to become. So Socrates goes off at the end of the book and he says, you know what? I think there are different types of soul, just like there are different types of regimes, different types of cities. And it sounds like he's going to just launch into this at the end of book 4, and this is the next topic, but you would be wrong. I want you to read books 5 and 6. We're only reading 2 books a week. That gives us 1 week to spend a little time with Aristotle and a week to spend with Plutarch's Life of Alexander, and I think that will be better, especially because we're about to get into the heart of this book, which is we really want to spend time on. They want to know about something he said earlier, and I read it earlier, but I will read it again. By being well educated they become sensible men, they'll easily see to all this and everything else we are leaving out. Because they haven't talked about everything that goes on in this city. Here's some things they left out. That the possession of women, marriage, and procreation of children must as far as possible be arranged according to the proverb that friends have all things in common. What? Yeah. Adeimantus says, whoa, you stop, Socrates. Back it up. Do you think you were just going to drop a bomb like that and move on? What? All women are in common? All children are in common? What? So we've got to talk about this. And yes, that is exactly what Socrates means. So read books 5 and 6. And tell me whether or not you would have enjoyed a conversation, you personally, for whatever reasons you might have, for yes or no. Yeah, if I asked for revisions on anything I gave them, get back to you, take a look at that. Otherwise, I will see you next week.
Thanks.
Bye-bye, guys.